Welcome to the Republican Professor. Today we have a very special guest, Matias Perttula.
It's an honor
I,
to be here.
did I say your name right? I mean, like you'd think I would know by now, but
No, that's actually really good. If you want to be really fancy, you can say Matias Perttula, but I'm not, I don't expect
wow,
anybody to say that, but yeah,
that
it's
is
all good.
amazing. You
Yeah.
pronounced that amazing. I can tell you've been doing that for a while.
Yeah. For 37 years. Yeah. So,
37, geez.
yeah.
Well, it is an honor to have you here on this podcast. One of my all-time favorite students. And I think that one of the funniest photos I have of my former students, you're in it.
Yeah.
And you're one of the reasons why it's so funny.
Yep.
Um, this was actually Moorpark College, 2008 and 2009. You were in political philosophy. And I
Yeah.
remember you sat in the back with the Fields kids.
Yep.
Yeah, you remember them?
Oh, I
Michael,
remember them very, very well. Yeah,
Michael and
absolutely.
Michelle.
Yeah.
Michelle went on to be famous. And then
Mm.
uh, you and Michael were in my symbolic logic class the following spring. And thank God
Mhm.
for photos. I don't have any photos from political philosophy. I wish I would have gotten some, but I ended up seeing Michelle again at Pepperdine when she went to Pepperdine because I was at Pepperdine at the same time.
Yeah, that's
So it was a
right.
little weird seeing. But so I have this picture. I'm going to see if I can find it really quick. But Matthias, and I love the way you pronounced your own name. How did you say it again? Say it for
Matias,
us.
Matias Perttula.
Okay, that is an accent. What accent is that? I mean, I
Well,
know,
that's
but
yeah, it's originally from Finland, of course.
Finland.
Yes, land in the far, far north.
I just remember having a hard time like figuring you out. I mean, there's nothing to figure out about an individual except for their individuality, right? So in a sense that's kind of a stupid thing to say, but I just remember you had a Finnish background, and so I expected you to be kind of like a communist or something, like a socialist or something like that. Not that all Finns are like that, but I mean I don't know much about Scandinavia, but what tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, no, I am originally from Finland, but I was actually born in Australia, so that was back in 1986,
Okay.
Brisbane, and my dad, both of my parents are from Finland originally. My dad just and his family, they immigrated to Central Australia, and that's where he ended up growing up. And when he was, I can't remember, like 18, 19, somewhere in that range, went back to Finland basically and met my mother there, and the rest is history from there. And we kind of traveled the world as a family for a while, and then when I came around, when the family happened to be in Australia at the time, and I don't remember much of that, but we moved pretty much right after, like a year and a half after I was born. We moved back to Finland, and so all of my kind of childhood memories, all that kind of takes place in Finland and southern part of Finland over there. So, and I still have a lot of family there, and we go back and forth. And but my family, we moved to the U.S. back in 1998, so that was a long time ago. I was about 12 at the time.
Wow.
So
So your first language is Finnish?
yeah, it really was. But I did grow
Wow.
up, obviously with my dad who spoke fluent English. So I grew up reading like the English Bible and some other English books with my dad and stuff. So it was good.
Now, were you a Christian when you took my class?
Oh yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
yeah, absolutely.
So does the Christian influence, the biblical influence, does that inform your politics? As it was a
Uh,
political philosophy class, and it seemed like I don't know, it seemed like you enjoyed my approach to things, and I was kind of I think I was kind of obvious about where I was coming from. I didn't want to be sneaky about it, but
No, definitely wasn't sneaky at all. But yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, to answer the first question, yeah, absolutely, it informs a lot of my personal political ideology, I guess you could say. So,
yeah.
absolutely influences that. I think probably most faiths, if you're really practicing, that's going to inform your decisions in life in general. So, yeah, absolutely.
Well, that makes sense. I am looking for, okay, so I found the photo and let's see if I
I know
can,
exactly which one you're talking about.
let me see if I can share it, effectively. Hmm,
Think
here
I
we
had my
go.
Justin Bieber hairdo during that time.
Screen sharing has failed to start. Okay. Let me try to see if I can. I'll give it a shot here. And here we go. I think this might work. Can you see anything?
Yeah, I can see it. Perfect.
Okay.
There it is.
This is my Moorpark College folder, and I'm trying to zoom in, but I'm hoping it captures here. And there it is right there.
There it is.
There's Matias, there you are. And see, the funny thing about this is it looks like you're holding my arm. That's the funny thing about it is it looks like we're a couple. We're a couple. And there's Kelsey.
Yep.
And I actually think she works for the CIA now. She went to UCLA like you did. You ended up
Yeah.
going to
Yeah.
UCLA.
Yeah.
Did you guys know each other at UCLA?
We ran into each other a little bit, I remember. So, but it's so big, you just kind of lose track. So, the
And then
school.
there's Michael Fields,
Yeah.
Michelle's brother, and uh, or I guess uh, he would say she's my sister. And then this kid right here, I can't remember his name, which is sad, but
Mhm.
I had him. He took my class again at Cal State Northridge, so you'd think
Nice.
I would know. But yeah, this is funny. Michelle's laughing. So Michelle saw that you look like you were holding my arm. That is so hilarious. I can't even
Yeah,
that is classic, Matthias. And that
it
was
was.
Symbolic Logic of 2009.
Yeah, it was a good
So,
time.
yeah. Now, where did you go after Moorpark College?
So after Moorpark, I went to UCLA, finished out my 2 degrees there, the history and political science. From there on, I worked for a little while, but then got actually a full ride scholarship to Southeastern University, and that was in Central Florida. Ended up studying business there, so I did my master's degree there.
Wow.
It was a
You got a full ride
accelerated.
for that? That's cool.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was a total God thing, and really grateful obviously that I got the opportunity and got to work with the president there for several years during my degree and after. Met my wife there. But as you probably already know, my heart was always kind of in policy and politics and wanted to work in the DC realm. And 2016, my wife and we decided to move and uh, make it happen in DC. So, and I worked at Brookings first for about a year and a half or so, and then after that, I worked at a place called International Christian Concern. And they were basically a religious freedom oriented organization. They do a lot of aid work and policy work, of course. That's the arm that I got to lead, and I was there for about 4 years, no, almost 5 years actually. So and then from there on, I came to AFPI. So I've been here now for about 8, 9 months. So, which has been awesome. Been a great transition, awesome team here, and just love what we're doing. So,
What was Brookings like? Because I always think of them as kind of left of center.
yeah, I think, yeah, they all do. I mean, I think that's kind of the perception there, but I'd say like my experience was really good. I got to work in the foreign policy department. So there's a lot of good uh lot of great thinkers and writers there that I really enjoyed connecting with and learning with. And it was for me, it was a great kind of at that time, it was a great kind of opportunity to kind of get familiar with how the think tank land works in DC and kind of understand how all that plays. And
Yeah.
so it was a really rewarding experience that way. So
What
yeah.
is it like working for a think tank?
Well, a lot of
What's your,
research.
yeah, what do you, yeah, like, do you mind, if someone's in
Yeah.
college and listening to this,
Yeah.
what, what could they expect, or, they, if they have no idea what this is like,
Yeah.
you walk through, is it like Mad Men, the show where you walk through all the secretaries and you go to your
Basically.
office
Yeah.
and they're all
Yeah.
typing on typewriters?
Yeah. Yeah. That's basically it, and it's,
Yeah.
Don Draper, if you're a senior
The
fellow,
phone,
you're
you
basically,
make yourself a drink and your phone rings.
yeah, yeah, that's exactly it. There's really no deviation from that ever whatsoever. So,
That's what I pretty much thought it was.
yeah.
So now, is it something you go into? Is it an office you go into, or?
Yeah, I mean, Brookings, Heritage, AFPI, so many others. Like they've obviously got brick and mortars, but there's a lot of, fellows and senior fellows and so on that probably work remotely and they come into DC when they need to, or they travel a lot. Folks travel all over the place all the time, wherever they're maybe needing to speak or have meetings or whatever. But yeah, I mean, policy, I would say like think tanks are very much like another higher step of higher education, even maybe, I don't know, like a
Uh-huh.
next step of, so a lot of research, a lot of writing. We do a lot of events, obviously do a lot of speaking as well, like when it's a relevant time to talk about your area of expertise. And
Uh-huh.
so yeah, so today's been an exciting day on the SCOTUS side. We saw a couple decisions come down, one in particularly in my area that was kind of cool. And
Which decision was that?
that was Groff versus DeJoy, and this is about the postal worker who basically wanted a religious exemption. He was from, like, I believe it was Western Pennsylvania, so rural Pennsylvania there, and Christian guy, didn't want to work on Sundays, but due to some circumstances, they started to schedule him, and this went on for a couple of years, and he didn't want to show up anymore on Sundays, didn't want to do that. And then eventually kind of led to the point that he had to resign. I think it was 2019 he had to resign. And so he ended up suing. And now the Supreme Court came down on a unanimous decision, which is pretty awesome, in favor of him. So
No
that's going to
kidding.
do. Yeah, so we're actually right now kind of going through all the kind of the decision points on it. And so it's a big win for religious freedom. So the guy's going to get to go to church on Sunday without being forced to work. So
Wow.
so that's good.
Gosh. Huh.
Yeah.
That's
And it'll
interesting.
have it'll have some implications throughout, obviously. I mean, you have to see exactly what that looks like, but it'll have some long-lasting implications, which is great, kind of throughout the workforce in the US. So
Yeah.
we'll see
Now
how that plays out.
you have the MBA and that training.
Mhm.
What was the link between the MBA and going into the think tank world?
So I worked at Southeastern University. I was there working with the president, kind of like a chief of staff role, basically managing his office,
Mhm.
communications, and a lot of government relations work there. That's which was great. I really enjoyed always the government relations side. Also, I did some adjunct teaching as well. I was in the College of Business there. And then I was also doing some coursework at Harvard Extension School. I did like 7 or 8 courses through there and was pursuing another master's degree, but then kids started coming along and I decided I'm going to be a dad now. And so we'll put the studies on hold for the time being. So, but that was,
You got married during this time?
yeah, in 2015, we got married. So
Wow.
yeah, we got 2 boys now, which is awesome.
No kidding.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I love being a dad. It's the best job in the world.
What are their names?
Lincoln is the oldest. He's 5, and then Cade, he's 5 months.
Oh,
So
those are cool names.
yeah.
Those are awesome names.
Good.
Uh, you know, so now going back to Brookings, the think tank issue. So it's not like it's top down where, your boss says work on this. Is it more collegial? You kind of agree to cover certain things and put out a
Hmm.
certain amount of writing or whatever.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, my role was very administrative at Brookings at the
Oh,
time. I was
really? Okay.
basically, yeah, I was working with the vice president of foreign policy at the time. His name was is Bruce Jones, great guy. Really enjoyed working with him, and so yeah. But I had an opportunity to help him with some research pieces, but really it was I had a strong administrative role in his office. But generally speaking, I'd say Brookings and think tanks, the ones that I'm somewhat familiar with, it's pretty collegial and pretty much kind of across the board we're working together. Personally, I try to bring that element into the I don't like hierarchies usually. I just like everybody kind of working together on things, and whatever your gift set is, that's what I think is the best way to get people going on things.
That's
So
a nice
yeah,
management style.
yeah, I think so too.
When
Servant
did you when did
leadership.
you when did you figure out that was your management style?
I'd say probably actually during the Brookings years, or even before that at Southeastern, they had a very strong servant leadership culture, and I love that. My MBA actually was pretty management heavy, management and leadership heavy. So we
Mhm.
read all the leadership gurus, Maxwell, Cotter, and all the others, and um, John Gordon and everybody else about how you motivate your team and set them up and have that organizational, energy and dynamic. I
Hmm.
just really always appreciated that, and they're great guys. They write good stuff, and I mean Maxwell is probably one of the most profound leadership guys out there. That's done some good amount of research and writing on it. So,
Okay.
and it works. It just works. That servant leadership model. That's the thing that works. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
And when you say it works, you mean it's the most effective at producing
Yep.
flourishing, including productivity, but also just happiness and satisfaction and
Yeah, strong work culture, man. Like absolutely. Like when you get rid of of course there needs to be a leadership structure, but you don't bring as leaders, you don't bring that, you know, better than thou attitude and I carry the title, therefore do what I say kind of thing. It's more about how me as the leader can serve you, my team, to make sure that you succeed and you become the best possible employee person in this team, and you're just gonna knock it out of the park. So that I find that that's the best way to really lead. And it
yeah.
motivates. It's motivating, and it's the way that I think it's the Jesus model. Personally, he's all about the how you bring out the best in people and how you push them forward and challenge them, and
Mhm.
and then sometimes gotta let them go, not in the sense like you fire them, but sometimes people reach their point and you've done all you can for them, and it's time for them to expand in their leadership and grow. So if you can't provide that as a leader, you need to find a way that you can support them to find that new context somewhere else where they can grow and they can flourish and continue to do what God's called them to do.
Hmm. Wow. Now you work at AFPI now. Let me
Yes.
let me share the website here, um, and the piece I most recently read. Here's AFPI, and it's probably not very clear on YouTube, but AFPI stands for
America
Amer
First Policy Institute.
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So from Brookings to America First Policy Institute, is your former boss having a heart attack right now?
I haven't spoken to him in a while. I'm sure it's all good. It's all good.
Well,
So,
what an interesting uh, topic. You have religious freedom challenges transcend the international and domestic divide.
mm,
Religious freedom is your deal. That's what you're working on.
yeah, absolutely. This has been a passion of mine for a long time. So, I guess that really got cultivated even more in the last 5 years, 5 or 6 years when I worked in my previous role. And just, we were serving persecuted Christians, but also like other persecuted religious minorities around the world. And I think that that was a really definitive time for me because I realized just um, how central this freedom really is, just like to the human experience and to be, I remember still like when I started the job and I was thinking that I'm going into a very niche field, like this is a very small slice of the whole foreign policy complex or something. And I remember Ambassador Brownback actually was affirmed, or he got through the Senate hearings and all that, and was confirmed or affirmed as the ambassador for international religious freedom in 2018, I think it was. So I remember going to his reception, and I was thinking it's probably going to be like 10 or 15 people here. I mean, I walk in and it's at the U.S. Institute of Peace, and it's just packed. I mean, there's hundreds of people here and all representing different, organizations that are working on international religious freedom or just religious freedom in general. And I remember just being blown away, going, wow, like this is a massive issue. Like
Huh.
there's a lot of interest in this issue. And so, yeah, so that was a really, and then, from there, I think I really started to understand just how big this issue is, especially internationally, where there is just a lot of persecution of all religions, basically. So,
Yeah.
and I don't think we really appreciate that as much in the West, and we really should. We should really begin to understand just how precious this is. So,
Wow.
yeah. So, yeah, quick story there, I guess.
I have to admit, I have not done a lot of work on religious free exercise stuff, outside of US border, right?
Hmm.
I mean, I'm broadly aware of it, mostly like from the Cold War, people being persecuted by the communists and of course the
Yeah,
Nazi era, the National Socialists.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, this is what's the focus of your piece here
So,
in America First here?
So what I tried to do with this piece is kind of bridge a gap that I saw happening in the kind of in the whole religious freedom space right now. Because whenever I worked on the issue, a lot of organizations would always say, "Oh, we just focus on international issues. We don't do anything in the domestic." There's always kind of like that caveat that a lot of organizations would say, and but, and I understood it, and I get it. I get why they don't want to do it because the domestic can be a little bit more divisive, I guess. But even on the Hill, like whenever, you go and brief a member on an issue that's happening or some attack or bombing happened at a church or whatever. Usually, whether there's a D or an R after their name didn't matter. They were all in, like the most liberal wing or the most conservative wing. They were always all about international religious freedom and were willing to work on it and do something, issue statements, write letters, whatever it is that they wanted to do. But so that was really great to see kind of that bipartisanship and unity on it. But as soon as it kind of delved into the domestic issues, then you start kind of seeing the splits, people thinking differently about the issues. And I never liked that because to me, like when I studied more and more of these issues and began to really kind of understand the full scope of religious freedom, and to me, it's a global thing now. Like whether you like it or not, like there are there's been traditional cases even in the U.S. like for decades now that forces have tried to claw back the religious freedom or to limit it somehow, some way. That's why like today's cases even are just so definitive. And I just think that it's under even greater threat now than it's ever been, like in the US and in the West. And when I look at cases like that I was dealing with in like India and Pakistan and the South Asian countries, that was kind of my portfolio that I dealt with, but I couldn't help but notice that I saw just so many similarities with the way that religious minorities were being targeted, being treated, and Pakistan, if you say something as a Christian about the Muslim faith that's, unbecoming, or if you disagree with it, you can be slapped with a blasphemy charge. And I talk about that in
Yeah.
the piece there, and carry some heavy duty penalties. Like one of the greatest cases there that I mentioned was Asia Bibi. She was actually on death row for almost 10 years in Pakistan because she said something that the majority Muslim community didn't like.
Yeah.
Um, but this is obviously it's religious freedom, it's freedom of expression, freedom of speech, all those kinds of things added in there, those
Right.
layers. But I see the same kind of stuff happening in the West now. Like if you say some conservative Christian principles or whatever that I believe that, there's only, two genders, or I believe that marriage is from a Christian's perspective, it's between a man and a woman, you can get, publicly just totally lambasted over that, saying all kinds of things. Probably the most prominent Western case that I also mentioned in there was the Finnish MP, actually, Päivi Räsänen, who I know very well, love her to death. She just posted a tweet. She said, because the Finnish Lutheran Church which is the official state church of Finland. I think it's the Evangelical Lutheran Church of Finland.
Wow.
They became an official partner on a gay pride event day in Helsinki back in like 2019, and she's a devout Christian, and she's been a part of these.
Is this the current MP of Finland?
Yeah, she's a current MP. So
Really? Wow.
yeah, and
And
she served
you
as
know her?
yeah, and she's served as Interior Minister of Finland for a long time. She's got a very like pronounced like political background, right? And public service, been in all that.
What did
She's an
she say?
MD.
Wow.
So but she posted a tweet kind of, and it questioned why the church was partnering on this
Hmm.
event when they teach something completely different. And then with it posted a picture of Romans 1, I think it was,
Oh, wow.
So it was a heavy
She's not
scripture.
messing around. Jeez.
No, no, no. She stood, but I mean, it's so anyway, that caught there's a couple other things that she had been a part of before, but you know,
Well,
um,
that's a great point. I mean, how many other people are thinking the exact same thing? She's just saying it out loud.
right. But so she did that, and it just brought an onslaught of public criticism on Twitter, and like
My
people
gosh.
just lambasting her, to the point that the general prosecutor actually ordered a criminal investigation to her, like, on this case.
Oh, for hate, is that a crime? Is hate speech is a crime?
She's trying to make it into one
Oh, I
because
see.
this. So in fact, she's publicly said, that this is the general prosecutor, that the Bible should not be believed. You can cite it in papers and things as a point of discussion, but to believe it is a crime, and you shouldn't do that. And like I'm misquoting her a little bit here, I'm sure, but that's
To believe,
essentially
well,
the extent of it.
that sounds like what she's saying is if you
Yeah,
believe this and you say it, because what's the
yeah,
point of, well, you should be able to say it whether you believe it or not, just
absolutely.
because that's part of thinking. I
Yeah,
mean, sometimes you have to think through things. And
part of being a rational human being. So
yeah,
but lo and behold, obviously the police investigation found no wrongdoing. The general prosecutor didn't even care. Like she filed criminal charges against her anyway. She went through the lower courts. The lower courts acquitted her. The general prosecutor didn't care, and she appealed the decision, and I believe it's now going to the Supreme Court of Finland, which is I think it's happening this summer, or I'm not quite sure the dates when the hearing happens, but I believe she's going to get acquitted again because it's just preposterous that she's being put through this insane
hmm.
public public persecution. So yeah,
Well, that's really interesting because they have a state church, and that makes it even more complex, I think, because
yeah, yeah.
um, why would you have a problem with that tweet if you have a state church?
That teaches the exact same thing that the tweet is saying, or the
You would think
scripture
that
is saying.
that would be the thing you would target, not a tweet.
Right. But
This is amazing. Wow.
yeah, it's a really, and the reason why I kind of I put that case obviously is it's Finland is regarded as and often ranked like the happiest, one of the most freest countries. You're talking about a Western liberal democracy here, and
I've
like,
heard that, yeah.
yeah. So and you're having to see this kind of a thing happen there that's coming from basically the attorney general equivalent of Finland, which is the general prosecutor there.
Yeah, wow.
So, and I want to kind of
Disturbing.
use this piece to let people understand like, hey, like this is happening, like we need to be paying attention to these things. And religious freedom for us in the West is almost something that we've kind of taken for granted for so many years. I mean, there's been cases like I
Yeah.
mentioned before, but this kind of what I would call public lynching of a well established individual like her that is happening in the West, the same kinds of things we see happening in the U.S.
Right.
This should raise some alarms with folks. So,
Yeah. You say that what is considered, this is one of your top line points. You say what is considered hate speech in the West is equivalent to blasphemy cases in the rest of the world.
mhm,
And you've mentioned that. Let's talk about the concept of hate speech for a second, because
mhm,
I think I think there's some popular level confusion about this, and I might be
mhm.
wrong about that, but can you walk us through how you think about hate speech? What just the concept of it?
Yeah, so I
You
think
know,
to like when I think about
like a description of it, and then like an evaluation of it.
yeah, I guess hate speech in these days you kind of equate that to violence in words, or you're offending someone's feelings or whatever. Or saying something that shouldn't be you don't you shouldn't say it basically, or the public opinion thinks that you shouldn't say, perceived public opinion shouldn't say that. But whenever I think
It hurts somebody's feelings, in other words.
right, right. So whenever I think about hate speech, I think immediately is like, well, that's just limiting someone's ability to express themselves, whether that's their religious ability, like you're through those hate speech laws, which thankfully we don't have any in the US right now. But to me
Yeah.
it's like you're saying the you're saying something, or the proponents of these hate speech laws are saying that you're saying something that is evil and wrong, and should never be uttered, the name that should never be uttered, right? But who gets to define what that is, right? I mean, I guess that's the big decision. The big point here is who gets to decide what hate speech is, who gets to define it. Like, at what point do you, like this general prosecutor of Finland is saying essentially that the Bible is hate speech? Really?
Hmm.
It's over the billions of people around the world that believe the Bible, and go to church and worship God, and this is what you're saying and should be banned essentially. Are you kidding me? No.
Yeah.
So to me, like whenever I think of hate speech, my antennas go up immediately. Whenever I hear someone talk about it, I think of it immediately as a threat to the First Amendment, 100%, and everything that entails. 'Cause where does it stop from there? Does it
Right.
go to freedom to assemble in the US? Is it freedom to petition? All those things.
Let's clarify something for the few left wingers that are watching this, and they're wondering if you're in the Klan right now. Um, so are you in the Klan? Let's get this out. You have you ever
No,
been
I
a
have
member
not.
of the Ku Klux Klan? Okay.
I have never been. No.
Um, have you ever tried to join and they said no, we don't have people like that with hair like that?
Exactly. Yeah, my hair. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
All right.
never.
All right. I'm just checking. I'm just
Yeah.
checking. So so this is not based on some kind of weird thing. You're just like you're not a homegrown terrorist or anything like that. You're just like a normal guy, pretty much.
I'm just a dude from Finland. So
Yeah.
went to college, and I love religious freedom.
Well, there is a complication in the United States. There's a thing called a protected category, and this
Mm,
is a root of a lot of um, I think a lot of the confusion we have about hate speech is the issue of protected categories. And the protected categories just keeps growing and it's hard to keep up with it. Um, and you can a smart political operative can pit these categories against each other where a bean counter or a bureaucrat doesn't know what to do because the bean counter is just trying not to get sued. And the
Hmm.
courts are, I think actually the courts are some of the lower courts. I don't know about the Supreme Court, but I know a lot of the lower courts are contributing to some
Hmm.
of this confusion. But so you have like sexual orientation is a protected category. Um, but then so is national identity, and so is color of your skin, and so is race. And
Mm.
race might be different than the color of your skin, um, and religion is on there. Turns out religion is on that list.
Yeah.
Okay, so what could possibly go wrong here? And what counts as a religion? How do you know? How do you know what the official thing is? Like with a lot of these um I hate to use the word because even just the word YouTube looks for this specific word, but recently there was uh, an issue of religious exemption. You could exempt out of a uh, a procedure, a very simple medical procedure that was mandated by employers. And I got a letter. I got a letter from Moorpark College,
Mm.
from Ventura County Community College District, saying I was a bad person because I didn't get this procedure and I was being
Did they use
disciplined.
that word exactly?
They didn't use the word bad, but I think it was clear I was going to get disciplined if I didn't file an exemption
Mm.
paperwork within a certain time period. And I got the letter, I think 48 hours before the time
Wow.
period. And I wasn't even teaching that semester at they didn't offer me a class that semester, so I wasn't even an active. So they were telling me to comply with this when I wasn't even an active employee at the time.
Hmm.
So, but the issue of a religious exemption to something like that, it just blows your mind. I'm trying to imagine what I would say. How much am I supposed to say? How are you supposed to come up with, and how are they supposed to evaluate whether this is a legitimate religious exemption? Like,
Right.
if it's a medical procedure,
Yeah.
why isn't it just medicine? So
Right.
it's really confusing. I mean, and so when you get to hate speech, um, I guess I hate the way they use hate
Hmm.
because because it's like a hate crime. It's that same issue with hate crime.
Right.
If you're murdered, I personally think love crimes should be illegal too. Because like look, if so if if someone murders someone from love, that's a problem too. But I mean, I think the problem is murder. I think that,
Getting into the philosophy
hello,
discussion again.
hello, you're dead. They murdered you. The question is, that's the only question is not whether not whether you're murdered from a certain motivation, but just, just, you're murdered.
Yeah.
I mean, anyway, but yeah, that's a fascinating connection with hate speech.
Hmm. Yeah.
uh Blasphemy. It
Yeah.
is
That.
like a religion because blasphemy is a religious term.
Yeah. Certainly.
Are you
I mean,
thinking
there.
of hate speech as a religious term?
I think in the West, it's being morphed into that. That's why I kind of say that there. It's like the equivalent of a blasphemy case in some other part of the world where blasphemy laws exist and they're used to muzzle people from expressing their religious views, and sometimes even their non-religious views. A lot of atheists get hit with this a lot of times. Not everybody in Pakistan who grew up Muslim want to stay Muslim, or
Hmm.
Same thing with, issues in India that we see with this. So there's multiple ways that you can kind of look at this, but essentially it's a muzzle that you can't say certain things that you based on the majority that kind of you're in that society. So if you're like, when I was in Pakistan, actually, you constantly I'm meeting with Christians there and some non-Christians and Hindus, and essentially, if you're caught up in a conversation with, and it's not just even like all Muslims, it's certain sects of Muslims that are happen to be in the majority. They go after the other sects of Muslims, but if the conversation trails into religion, it's like immediately like the Christians just want to try to talk about something else, like talk about politics or something completely different that just so that they don't somehow wind up saying the wrong thing, and then literally there'll be a lynch mob at their door, to take them and their families. And they use it constantly as a way to suppress them, suppress the Hindus, suppress the Christians, all those religious minorities. And I'm just talking about Pakistan in general, but this is how the blasphemy laws work.
Yeah.
So you equate that to our Western society, like, you go to a dinner party or something, and can you express your Christian views without getting lambasted, by
Right.
some way being called a bigot or something because you just hold to this view that,
Mhm.
there's only two genders, male, Genesis 1, male and female, he created them. So but so that's when I kind of see that the similarities there are striking. So it's that group think, it's that same, and at what point can you just accuse someone, because this happens all the time, like a lot of folks even in Pakistan, they may have not even said anything, but just a mere um accusation of a blasphemy, saying, will land you in very hot water with the community. And not even like with the law enforcement at this point, it's literally the rest of the community that's going to come after you. um
Yes.
so I those kinds of things, when you see you can see the parallel that I'm drawing here, obviously, because how many times do you see maybe some prominent religious leaders in the US make statements? It's fine to criticize, that's fine, but when it's this militant violence almost that you're faced with, um,
Yeah.
that's
I'm
concerning.
I'm sharing my screen and I'm going to add something to what you're saying because a lot of my students don't they're not putting this together. A lot of this is just language. It's not even as specifically religious. I think a lot of time we're trying to fit a lot into the First Amendment as a legal protection.
Mm,
But I want to say it's really about the language. It's about the American language, and law is rooted in language and
mm,
heritage. Any language has a long heritage.
mhm,
I'm sharing for those who can't hear. Sorry, for those who are not watching on YouTube. I'm sharing just my MacBook Pro definition of marriage that was on my MacBook Pro in 2013 when the Supreme Court decided the marriage decision. And this, I later found out, was just the Oxford English Dictionary. Marriage, a formal union of a man and a woman, typically recognized by law, by which they become husband and wife. And there's a secondary definition. That's
mm,
a 2013 Oxford English Dictionary. I have a 2015 hard copy,
mm,
and that was the year that Obergefell versus Hodges was handed down.
mhm,
And I'll just read the dictionary here. This is just the English language. The state of being husband and wife. That's Oxford English Dictionary, 2015. It's not the Bible.
mhm,
It's not the Bible. It's the English language. And what I love about dictionaries is I just go next door to man, and I'm just reading the dictionary.
mhm,
An adult human being. And then it also can mean just human being, a person of either sex. And then the example they give is all men are created equal. Thomas Jefferson. That, of course, we're coming up on July 4th. This is
Hmm.
just language. I mean, I know that, you know, English is a lot of people who speak English are Christian, and maybe that has something to do with it. But I also have dictionaries in Chinese, and I have dictionaries in German, and I have dictionaries in Greek. I have an ancient
Mm.
Greek one here, Latin, and what I don't like is when people are forced to talk differently
Right.
by threat. I don't like that. I think that's
Mm.
manipulative,
Yeah.
and I don't like self-censorship either. I don't like that what you're talking about with the self-censorship.
Right.
So,
And then, like, I'm sorry if you had another thought there, but
well, I mean,
I'm
it's
just,
just, you know, I was like, just if typically what happens in language,
hmm
if you pay attention to the dictionaries and you're a bilingual or
hmm
maybe even trilingual, I don't even know, but so bilingual people are probably more attuned to this. Dictionaries are very important when you're learning another language. You got to have a stable meaning so you can understand what the hell's going on. I mean, it's hard learning
hmm
another language. Probably wasn't. How old were you when you learned English?
I was, well, kind of throughout my whole childhood. I mean, I was surrounded by it, but I guess
Yeah.
really, really started to learn probably like in second grade back in Finland. You start taking English courses or Swedish or whatever. Languages get introduced very early in the Finnish school system. So,
Do you remember it being a painful experience or was it easy for you? I mean, you're
so
so young.
for me, I'd say like the English was not painful. And I think that's mostly because my father was already an English speaker, and English was kind of a common thing at the house already in some ways. So I don't remember it being painful at all. So, in fact, I enjoyed it. I always liked languages. So, but I never learned very many.
Well, I have a Funkin Wagnall's desk dictionary that I had on my desk when I was in elementary school. What,
Mm,
you know, in the 1980s. Yeah.
yeah.
And I looked up the word gay recently and it just says happy, cheerful, kind.
Hmm.
And I looked up marriage and union between a man and woman by which they become husband and wife.
Mm,
And I told my students, brought this to class and I said, I think every marriage should be as gay as possible. And their eyes crossed and they, you know, and one kid said, "Hey, you're manipulating the language." And I said, "No, no, I just read from the dictionary. I'm using the English language."
right.
Now, I mean, when it gets to the point when you're using the English language and people say that there's something wrong, you know,
Mhm.
it's just so just on a purely linguistic level.
Mm,
These are fundamental issues. But
yeah.
I was going to make a point about definitions though,
Yeah.
because yes, as the words do sometimes take on an additional sense. Just
Hmm.
like, okay, Steve Jobs, he is in the grocery store and he's in the fruit section and he looks at the apple and he's like, I know, I'm going to name my computer company after that fruit.
Hmm.
Well, okay, now I'm on an apple, not the fruit, but the
Yeah.
computer. You know, and so that's an additional sense of how it works.
Yeah.
Usually it's layered on. That's why there's multiple senses of a term, like in
Hmm.
like I just showed you with the MacBook Pro. There's two
Hmm.
senses of marriage there, and oftentimes it's come off. I looked at a really old dictionary, and it can be any close union as a second definition of marriage. And
Hmm.
in on Oxford's man definition, there's two or three. They have the definition that's gender neutral, and they also have the definition that's just the male human. But they also
Hmm.
have like an exclamation, like when you say, "Man, that's crazy," or there's different uses of the term, and gay took on another use.
Yeah.
Could mean homosexual, right? And then that's in the later dictionaries. But my
Hmm.
point is that that's an addition. They didn't
Yeah.
take off the happy part because it
Mm,
still means that too.
right. Right.
Otherwise, you couldn't read these older books and even understand what they're saying. I mean, because they use the
Right.
term gay all the time. And we had a gay old time,
Yeah.
and so, but what it worries me is these words like marriage, they are changing the definition. They're not adding to it. In other
Mm,
words, they're taking that this is just 2013. I mean,
right.
this is after you were my student, years after
Yeah.
the dictionary I just showed you. And as a result of court decisions, they're totally replacing, like scrubbing out, like 1984, like as if it never existed. And
Right.
these kids are looking online at these online dictionaries, and they don't see the dictionary that was the definition that was there for hundreds of years. And
Yeah.
I've looked in the archives. I've looked in the Claremont archives at really old dictionaries. I've looked at Black's Law Dictionary 1891, Pope's from 1920 during segregation. I've looked at no racial criteria in marriage at all, by the way,
Mm,
during slavery,
mm-hmm.
and Webster's 1828, and you got that stability in the language for so long, and then all of a sudden, internet, someone updates it, it's gone. And I worry about the kids. I'm not worried about folks that are your age and younger or older. The kids are just, glued to their phones, and they don't look at books.
Yeah.
And it's the language. It's like the control of the language. Because if you can control the language, you can control how people think and the
Yeah.
perception.
Language matters 100%.
So
And
how does
yeah.
America First fit into this? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I notice it's called America First.
Mm-hmm.
Your um, your piece is published at America First.
Yeah.
How how do we lead the way? Is that the sense we're leading the way, or?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's a number of different things that, we could, from religious freedom to others, I think we need to continue to safeguard it, that not everybody thinks the way that some of the mainstream um thinking might be presented or presented as mainstream thinking regarding these, old institutions like marriage, that there are some serious religious pieces and just historical things that people adhere to. And I think the danger a lot of times is that when the, I guess in this case, the left tries to too often mandate a way of thinking, mandate a
Yeah.
worldview that is only correct. Everything else beyond this is wrong, and discussion about it is wrong also. So having any kind of, alternative opinion, kind of what you were talking about already earlier, kind of this compelled speech, but maybe compelled thinking, maybe that's the word that you really want to, or the combination of words that you want to use there. That's scary. That's absolutely scary. I mean, it eliminates the place for debate. It eliminates the whole thing that actually facilitated the ability of that side to have those views, right? The
Right.
free the public square of ideas and thoughts, right?
Hmm.
So now to move and to eliminate that liberty and freedom for others, or put things in place that would do that, and that's a scary place to be in. 100%. We've seen that throughout history. It never works out well. Freedom of speech is, and all the basically the First Amendment freedoms, religion, speech, assembly, etc. All of that is the cornerstone of any free and open society that is worth its salt. Um, Without that, you're in bad trouble, really, really quick. I think you've seen that in 1930s Germany. You've
Hmm.
seen that, I mean,
Oh
communist
yeah.
China now, of
Oh
course.
yeah.
You see that everywhere where freedom is being constantly attacked. And having that compelled attitude that you're only allowed to have this. No. So I can make up my own mind and my own opinions. You can disagree with me, and you can dislike me if you like. You're free to do that. That's absolutely fine. But you will respect me, and you will respect my ability to and my freedom to have those views and to hold on to the things that I hold dear. And I will do that for you as well. And I think part of it is there's just a lack of civility.
Yes.
People can't, how many times do you engage in like a theological or a political discussion, and immediately if you say, well, I lean right or I lean left, um, you start putting labels on that individual. You start putting
Right.
all those things that, Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, all these propaganda outlets say, you know, that
Yeah.
you should think about something or someone. And I think that's process of discussion and civility has just been lost. But that's why freedom of speech is so important, because it safeguards that. You should have that.
Ma-
So
Matthias, what was your time like at UCLA? I don't think
I
I
had
ever
a
talked to you about that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I had a great experience. I mean, obviously it's very left leaning in many ways. It's a regular public college, but I always felt very proud to be a Bruin, and I still do. Like, I had a great experience there, and
That's good.
I studied history and political science, and
You felt
I
respected?
I only had a few
Welcome?
professors that I didn't really like. Well, that I felt like that there was definitely some strong bias and that my views would not be respected. I remember I took one of my
Okay.
capstone courses for, I think it was in my history degree. I remember it was about the history of conservatism, and I remember my
No kidding.
professor.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, it was funny, but he I took one look at the list of literature, and it was like some of the worst pieces of, conservative literature that you can think of to paint the movement as. And I was like, this is, and everybody knew who knew their stuff, at least, like, I was just like, this is funny. Like, the agenda is all too clear here. But anyway, that was my only kind of negative experience in it. But regardless, I had a overall a very positive experience, and I liked it. Definitely had good professors for the most part. So that I could tell anyway. So
Yeah, I mean, I'm coming at this as an educator thinking about the problems with the free speech and the free exercise. And my main issue is what I see in the classrooms and on campuses and now in corporate culture too. It's really bad in corporate culture is that
right.
there's almost like a robot type of talking,
Mm,
and there's a heavy policing and of speech. And I think at the corporate level, it's sometimes enthusiastic in a really weird, creepy way,
yeah.
where where people are excited about the BS. I
Mm,
mean, everybody knows it's BS, but they get excited about it because they think they're going to get a pay raise or something. I don't know what, but
right.
it's like I'm really disturbed that the colleges and universities are pumping out this, and I don't know what to do about it, but I don't like the chill in the classroom when I say something obviously true.
Mm,
And I've brought in like 20 dictionaries into the
right.
classroom, and
Right.
I've seen them look around and they could not believe that
Right.
it says a woman is a human female. And
Yeah.
that's just the language, and or
Shocking.
whatever, or wife is, or a widow. Like I look up
Yeah.
wife and widow, and they're looking up widow, and I say, do you know what a widow is? And they're like, it's a woman who has lost her husband and has not remarried. That's what a widow is. I look up sham marriage.
Yeah.
This is in a dictionary with the pride colors across it.
Right.
And this is one of my favorite examples. And I wrote about this on. Did I write about this on Substack? I think I'm writing a piece on Substack. I'm going to publish it, but
Yeah.
they this particular Black's Law Dictionary. It was after a court decision, um, scrubbed totally scrubbed the one that was, you know, for hundreds of years, long time, legal
Mm,
dictionary, and just replaced it.
mm-hmm.
But they didn't replace all of. I looked through, and it says sham marriage.
Mm,
A sham, because this is a issue with fraudulent marriage is an issue in law because
yeah,
like for immigration
yeah,
and in the military because you get benefits. And
mm-hmm.
sham marriage is defined as a couple who goes through all the formal requirements but has no intention of living together as husband and wife. and I was,
Interesting.
and I pointed this out. I was like,
Yeah,
and widow, for example, and a widower is right next to it.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
opposite. And I was pointing out that you can tell, you can see
yeah,
the language it's still fresh because a lot
yeah.
of these same sex couples, they haven't had their partner die yet.
Mm,
That's how fresh this is. That's why they haven't changed it
yeah,
yet.
right, right.
And and
Fascinating.
and I don't mind, like I said, I don't mind the evolution of the language. What I
Right.
don't like is the
The erasing
chill.
of the, yeah.
Yes, the erasing and
Mm-hmm.
the chill and the
Yeah,
people looking around and can I say this? And
yeah,
I
right,
try to get my students to just say, look within, look
right,
within. That's who you should be looking at to ask if I can say this. Don't look over there. Don't look over there. Look
right.
within. What do you really believe? What do you think? And
Mm-hmm.
and if you can't do that in the classroom, if we can't do that as a society and a
Yeah,
culture, I'm not sure.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So this
Yeah,
seems to be like a human problem, and I'm not
yeah.
sure it's really a problem here. I'm not sure how America can lead the way. Do you have any thoughts about that?
How America can lead the way, man. Yeah. Um, in some ways, like, if we don't get it right at home, then our credibility internationally is, you know, kind of tarnished in that way. But you got to be
That's
able
true.
to, take the fact that, you're, um, got to be free to be offended. You got to be able to take other opinions, and we got to get over ourselves with, we can disagree and we can be offended by other people's opinions or whatever they want to say. But at the end of the day, there's that mutual respect that continues to be. And I think if we can restore that, I kind of mentioned that civility into conversation. I think that that's one of the great ways that we can lead the way. I
Mhm.
think continuing to champion, all the values that I think really made America very unique, especially when it was founded. All those freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, all those First Amendment stuff, the Bill of Rights, all of those. Did we have it perfect from the beginning? Of course not. No one's. I don't know that anybody's ever said that we had it perfect. We don't have it perfect now either, but we're
Right.
doing our best. But I think it's as long as the value piece is being driven and that's being instilled, I think that that's the best way that you can lead forward in the world, not just domestically but internationally. Values, that's what it's
Yeah.
about. So um
I'm gonna add to what you said,
yeah,
just if it's okay. You don't have obviously you don't have to
yeah,
agree. You know me, but when people say we had it right at the founding, um, I'm fully on board with that with the principles. I
mm,
want to add to that that I really do believe that there was a special work uh, of God, of the Lord, in
I
in
agree.
that in the mid to late 1800s with the founding of the Republican Party,
Mm-hmm.
because the founding of the Republican Party tried to correct some really fundamental problems that the founders thought would go away, like for
Yeah,
example with slavery,
right.
and they they had an enormous task, um, and they had some success. They did
Right.
end slavery, and
Hmm.
they were able to move the ball down the road a bit, but there was enormous opposition, and it came at great cost. And
Right.
um, so
Great cost.
when I think of July 4th, I think of all
Mm.
of that.
Yeah.
Um, and that's what that's what I think of. It's the promise of the future to try to
Hmm.
protect religious liberty. And I would put in the Second Amendment too there. I don't know
Yeah.
how you feel about that,
Oh,
but
I love the Second Amendment, 100%. So,
wow. Now, did you feel that way when you were at Moorpark College?
oh yeah, I'm a
Yeah.
firm believer in the Second Amendment. Absolutely. Absolutely.
It would be
Always have been.
interesting. It would be interesting to see America first on that. Like, I don't know how that would work. What do you think?
There's already stuff out there that we put out on it. I'd need to
Is
send it
that
over
really?
to you.
Wow. Wow.
Oh yeah. Yeah. But
Like
Second Amendment.
how could we lead the way for places like England and Australia and New Zealand and just the
Well, I think
Anglo countries like Canada?
well, I mean, this debate too is like it, does getting rid of guns make people less violent? 'Cause the issue is that people are
No.
violent and there are evil people in the world.
Right.
So if it's not guns, it's knives or bats or something else that they're gonna find ways.
Or
So
governments.
the issue is a human issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the issue is a human issue. It's not a gun issue. It's always it's the fall of man, quite frankly. The corruption of man that is at the heart of the issue here. So this is me, Matias, personally kind of speaking here. But as I think about it, and I'm not an expert in the Second Amendment, but obviously it's something that we're bombarded with all the time. But I feel that this, the it's a human issue. That's what it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
And I mean, I would love to see, and it's true because there's a lot of studies, guns do prevent crimes. Of course they do, you know. Otherwise, Secret Service and the others wouldn't have guns on them. So
Right.
obviously they protect people, and there's been numerous cases when women have been able to defend themselves against an attacker, potential rapist. We that they were able to defend themselves, and I think that's
Right.
another kind of fundamental right that I should be able to do that, not just for myself but for my family.
Yeah.
If an intruder or somebody wants to break into my home and I don't know their intentions, I should be able to defend myself and
Right.
have the right to do that 100%. Um,
Also
but
the
like,
responsibility, I would say the responsibility to get trained,
yeah,
because
absolutely.
it is a skill. I mean,
Yeah,
you have a right to drive a car, but you also have the responsibility
yeah,
to drive safely and to know what you're doing, to get the
yeah,
training that you need. Yeah.
yeah. When I like to hunt, so I go, but I went through the training courses for that, and I thought they were
Yeah.
fantastic. They were
Oh yeah,
very
yeah.
useful. Learned a whole lot, and especially for someone like me who doesn't have a lot of background in that, being able to go through that and have experienced teachers kind of walk you through this is the right way to go about it. I think that was fantastic, very useful. So responsibility, integrity, and having all those, having
Yeah.
instilling the responsibility to handle something like a firearm.
Yeah.
That's the core of it. But like I said, it's a human issue. That's the issue that we have with
Yes,
gun.
that's right. And what to link this with the First Amendment issues is when people have the wrong view about the Second Amendment, I think it's because they have a problem with believing a default belief that the state has some kind of omniscience on preventing crime or whatever,
Hmm.
some kind of expertise for every
Hmm.
situation, and a competence that they just
Hmm.
don't have. And we see this in England and I don't know about Canada. I think you know Canada seems like it's a pretty safe place for the most part, but people will encounter crime unexpectedly. And the
Hmm.
point is not how often it happens. It's when it does happen, do you have a right
Hmm.
to try? At least you might not be successful, but do you have a right to try to defend yourself? And I find that people just have that flipped on its head as almost as if you try, you're the criminal. And it's like, no, that's to get criminality
Right.
wrong. That's the opposite of what criminality is.
Hmm.
You know, there's a distinction between the
Yeah.
criminal
Yeah.
and the
I think.
victim, and you have to preserve that. What do you think about that?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think I agree with you 100%. So, you got to have the distinctions there. And fundamentally, like if, you think about kind of the gun laws, like if you're a criminal, are you going to really abide by the gun laws? And are you going to get a firearm regardless of what the gun law says? If it's a gun-free zone, are you as a criminal going to respect the fact that it's a gun-free zone? I think not. If you're a criminal, um, the motives of men or human beings. So
All right, we're back. Sorry.
yeah,
What were you
no
saying?
worries. So yeah, Second Amendment issues. I think I was saying that I don't think you can't legislate righteousness. You can't legislate morality in that sense. You can enforce good things. You can enforce laws that are good, but laws don't make people good. They have to decide to be good, and they have to decide to do the right thing. Period. And for those of us who decide to do the right thing every day, I think we should be afforded the ability to defend our right to do that
Wow.
and hold to those.
And be able to express it and argue about
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
So
Matthias, I'm so man, I'm so excited to see you, and it's so nice to talk to you and hear your voice again. And I'm just struck with it seemed like when you were at Moorpark College, you were just like you had so much energy. That's how I remember you. You were just like bouncing off the walls.
yeah.
And you are so just chill right now. You're just like
Yeah.
you've settled into adulthood and you're just I know you were an adult back then, but
Yeah, yeah.
everybody's like
I
a
get
kid
it.
to me.
Different level of adult, I guess.
Yeah,
So
I guess
some
so.
ways. Yeah, but
But
with
yeah,
kids and a wife can mellow you down and kind of bring a little bit more perspective, I suppose. But yeah,
well, thanks
it's
for
good.
sharing your work and what you've been up to and your yeah, I mean, thanks for what you're doing.
Thank you for having me. It was so great to connect and just love. This is my heartbeat, the religious freedom. So whenever you want to talk, always happy to talk. So there'll be
Oh, I'd
more
love
stuff coming out from our end. So
okay. That's great. I would look forward to that.